Good afternoon. We have for the last 15 days been running a program under the Global Initiative of Academic Networks, GYAN, on empirical legal studies in law and psychology. We have been fortunate enough to have with us Professor Jane Goodman from Charlehurst. I got that wrong now. Sorry. Charles Sturt University, Australia. And whilst Jane is at Charles Sturt University, she has had a really checkered career. She's recognized as one of the experts world over in law and psychology. And we at NALSAR really feel very fortunate that Jane has initiated us into this program and into this area and discipline. We're hoping that Jane's being with us in this last fortnight will kind of trigger work on evidence-based legal studies at NALSAR. I want to sort of take this opportunity of talking with Jane on some of the critical concerns that we have in launching this program and take literally her last minute guidance before she flies out of Hyderabad. Welcome, Jane, and thank you so much to agreeing to do this interview after sort of like doing more than your load of teaching in the last 15 odd days. I had a set of questions which I thought I would run past you, which I'm hoping can sort of inform us not only in curricular work in law and psychology, but also in some of the administrative reforms we might want to do in our own university, and some of the collaborations we need to initiate if this kind of empirical based legal work has to happen. So, could I shoot?
No, go ahead. And I think this teaching experience has really been maybe one of the first collaborations too.
Yes.
Because you really have been co-teaching it. So I do want to acknowledge all of your input and what a pleasure it has been to work with you here and with the class of students on this topic. So thank you.
I thought, they very often tell you that I think both charity and innovation should begin at home. So my first question to you is starting to take or like seeking your guidance on one of our most pressing kinds of problems, which I do think may gain from some of the insights that I obtained as we did the course together. I basically wanted to speak with you on the problem of sexual harassment in campuses and necessarily talk with you on what kind of initiative we could do at NALSAR, which then could maybe provide guidance to other educational institutions the country over. If I recollect, amongst the things that you had said when you did that entire lecture around you did not talk about just sexual harassment as such, you spoke in terms of workplace inequities and the problems that you have there. And there were two things which caught my attention. One was the whole issue of how difficult it is to be establishing just mental injury or anything which is only psychological. The other was as to how very important it is to be addressing workplace hostility or institutional hostility in relation to the disadvantaged or the excluded people within that space. Considering these are pressing issues for us, I thought if you could give me some guidance on what we could do at NALSAR. We've done the whole grievance redress committee and people making complaints and trying to resolve it that route. It hasn't taken us very far. So I thought with your wide experience, if you could give us another entry point, and if this interplay between law and psychology could provide insight to policy programs of another kind.
Yeah, sure. Well, there are a couple of thoughts that I have about it, and I think the first thing that your university needs to take on board is that you're certainly not alone in trying to forge new ways to address this problem. I mean, really, in the last few years across the globe, there's been just a constant set of media issues and academic articles, anguishing over dealing with sexual harassment issues on university campuses. And in fact, just in the last month, the Australian government launched a special response to this kind of crisis, and most universities weighed in with their responses as well, establishing, I think, at least some very strong solidarity between the institutions, that there will be zero tolerance, and that this kind of practice has to be addressed and stopped and can't be ignored. And so having some sort of institutional infrastructure where there is solidarity or unity among the faculty and the administrative procedures is helpful, because then you don't end up with a situation where there's tacit acceptance or tolerance of matters, because there's an all-encompassing stance to try to reduce them and respond both to the complainants as well as to the persons who are the alleged offenders. And both have concerns that need to be addressed, because it is such a divisive issue.
Yes.
And so the first key principle in addressing it would really be to try to avoid making it more divisive. And I suppose in thinking about some of the things that I've heard about how legislation or some of the regulations on this work in the Indian context, and seeing that they're actually very focused just on one gender, that alone, seems to be perhaps, while addressing a source of some of the major complaints itself, that approach is excluding of others. And so I think it is really helpful to have a structure that is gender neutral, but also encompassing of other issues with respect to a hostile workplace and just gender issues alone. So that individuals who might be victimized in some way because of disabilities, or because of transgender issues that don't fit into some of those traditional protected categories, or certainly if you have regulations that protect women only, that's going to be in a way alienating to men and others. So that principle seems helpful. But with respect to your question really about the psychological injuries, I think a vast amount of research has been done in the last decade and a bit, just focusing on psychological outcomes of other kinds of hostile workplace environments through some of the work done on bullying. And what was very clear in some of that initial research was that while most people think that they will know what bullying means, again, there was a favoring of physical bullying that got all of the attention over and above all of the kinds of psychological abuse and forms of hostile workplace environment that are much more subtle, oftentimes, but it turns out very, very damaging. And so a lot of work was done just on understanding, more about the psychological consequences of bullying that was non-physical, that I think provides a very good resource to look at in terms of where to go with prevention policies and also looking at the consequences of bullying. And so that body of research is really combined, I think, with a lot of more traditional anti-discrimination kind of legislation to forge the need for framing these issues in a different way, much more positively. And I think a helpful way is to focus on everybody's right to, a safe and healthy workplace or university, rather than have a list of prohibitions. Because what tends to happen with a lot of sexual harassment training, and while the education is necessary, it tends to be reduced to a list of sort of don'ts, rather than focusing on the positive social relational issues that can really serve to inhibit those sorts of behaviors as well. So if we focus on the right to a positive, healthy workplace, and have some unified administrative policies that do that, that's much more inclusive, because everyone can understand that they have the right to a healthy workplace, and it doesn't become quite as divisive of some of the naming, blaming, claiming kinds of practices that are associated with grievance processes.
So just to sort of like see it to see, at one level you did say that we should put out this message that there will be zero tolerance of a certain kind of behavior. And you're also saying along with it that we shouldn't make the prohibitory part of the policy its keynote or its key, we should along with it have a more inclusive, positive agenda. But I presume with that positive agenda, the zero tolerance is also a piece. It can't be dropped. But it shouldn't be made the key piece. That's the point you're making.
Yes.
I've got it right.
No,